Hey everyone, welcome back to another flipped lesson for anatomy and physiology class, where today we'll be talking about tissues. These ones, not Kleenex. All right, so make sure you follow along with these notes as we go through. At the end, go back and if you're missing anything, go back in the video and find it. All right, so what is a tissue, right? Again, not that box of Kleenex, but when we're talking about biology and we're talking about human anatomy, what is a tissue in the body? Well, it's a group of similar cells that work together to perform common functions. And if you think way back to your biology classes, even at the beginning of this class, we talked about levels of organization. How do we study the body on different levels, from really, really big picture to really, really tiny picture? So we could look at the atomic level, we could look at the molecular level, we could look at the cellular level. So now we're talking about tissues, right? How all those cells come together to function together. All right, so that's what a tissue is, and that's what we're going to be looking at a little bit in this video, way more in class and as we go through our cats. All right, so there's 4 types of tissues. Definitely know these. All right, the first one is epithelial, second connective, third muscle, and fourth nervous. So those are the 4 types of tissues, and they make up everything in your body, which I think that's the awesome part, is that we can take all these different types of tissues and put together all the really complex organs that are in your body. So as we go through this video, we're going to briefly summarize each one, what it is, some of the jobs it does, and then in class we'll go more in depth on the different types, how to tell them apart, and some of their characteristics. So we'll start with epithelial tissue. This is the type of tissue that covers your body inside and out. All right, it makes up glands, and it attaches to underlying connective tissue at the basement membrane, right? So you see these boxes, these represent epithelial tissues. They are connected to that connective tissue that's down here, right? There's a membrane in between that connective and the epithelial tissue, okay? And there's no blood supply usually in this epithelial tissue. Like you've got your skin, right? That's why maybe sometimes you'll get a really small paper cut on the outside of your skin, and it doesn't actually bleed. You didn't get down to that level of tissue, that connective tissue, which has blood running through it. These cells reproduce really quickly, which results in rapid healing, and they're really tightly packed together, which is why you could get a little scratch or cut on your hand, and in a day or two, it's healed, right? It's almost back to normal. Okay, so some functions of epithelial tissue. They are there to protect your body. Obviously, our skin is epithelial tissue, so it's completely covering your body, completely keeping things from coming in, protecting you from infection, as well as physical, right? I can punch my skin and it doesn't rip open. Secretion, it helps secrete or get rid of things like your sweat can secrete through your skin, okay? Some hormones. Absorption, your skin absorbs certain things. If you ever sat in a pool for too long, your skin can absorb water, and that's why you get all pruny. Excretion, right? Getting rid of sweat, salts, things like that. And your senses, our sense of touch really comes through this. And that has to do with the epithelial structure. All right. And again, we're going to get more in depth on this in class, but they're categorized on the shape of the cells and the layers of the cells. So you can see some cells, epithelial cells, are really, really tall and only have one layer, maybe a couple. Some are really short and square and have multiple layers, or a single layer. So when we look at all the different areas of epithelial tissue in your body, you'll see it comes down to shape and the number of layers of that tissue. All right, our second, maybe my favorite, is connective tissue. It is the most abundant body in your tissue, and it, if you think about the word connective, right, it connects structures, under my video here, together. All right, so your connective tissue kind of ties everything together. It provides support, protection, framework. It fills space, stores fat, produces blood cells, and fights infection. I mean, what an awesome tissue. It does all these functions, and it's all over the place. It's usually consisted of cells that are kind of scattered out more, and there's some kind of ground substance with fibers, right? And not fiber like in your Fiber 1 bar, but fibers that kind of hold things together and give some structure. And most tissues here actually have a really good blood supply, because we'll talk about blood is actually a connective tissue. So we call these things vascular, right? There's blood flowing to these areas. All right. And there's 3 types of cells in connective tissues. You have mast cells, which you see down here, which help prevent clots. You have macrophages, cells that eat up old connective tissue. and fibers and kind of get rid of that old stuff. And you have fibroblasts, or they produce fibers. I think about the B as for building, right? They produce new fibers. So those are your three types of cells that make up tissues. And you have collagenous tissues, or if you ever heard the word collagen, right? In bones, ligaments, and tendons. And you have elastic, like in your ears and vocal cords. So that's why your ears could be really stretchy, all right? And you have collagen in your skin that helps keeps it nice and puffy and give it structure. And maybe you know somebody who's a little bit older, grandma, who when her skin gets really saggy, gets some collagen inserts or added in to get that nice puffy skin back in and no wrinkles, okay? And you can see here, looking at this tissue, right? We have these little strings, they look like, are those fibers, the elastic fibers, collagen fibers, and they're mixed in with cells. All right, and again, we're going to go way more in depth on all these in class, but you can see there's many different types or categories of connective tissues. We have fibrous connective tissue, collagen, which is like that loose stuff, right? We have blood, really important connective tissue. I think one of the most important because it's bringing oxygen around everything. There's red blood cells, white blood cells, plasma, the liquid inside. You have cartilage, you have adipose, which is fat, right? Under our skins, we've already started cutting into our cats, and we've seen how fatty, that yellow fat some of them are. That's a connective tissue. And obviously bone is made up of connective tissue. So all these types here work together to help connect all the parts of our body, and that they can work together and give it that support and structure. So our next type of tissue is muscle tissue. And there's actually three types of muscle tissue, as you can see here. The first one, which we'll go over, is cardiac muscle or cardiac muscle tissue, right? And there's special cardiac cells. Obviously, you find these in our heart, and they are responsible for pumping that blood, which is a connective tissue, by the way, throughout our body, our entire life, right? They never stop. They never take a break. So they're really, really strong. They can work really efficiently, and they actually have their own mini nervous system. They don't really need the brain to say every second, pump, 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 right? They can kind of do that on their own. They're controlled by the brain, but they have their own special nervous system. So the first type of muscle tissue is cardiac. The second is skeletal or striated. And you can see, look how awesome. So if you were to zoom in even further with a microscope, you'll see here all these little individual tiny lines, right? Those are all filaments, that striation, and all these cells make up muscles, right? So they're stacked and stacked on top of each other. And skeletal muscle is cool because it's attached to our skeleton, our bones, a connective tissue. And that allows for things like movement, right? I can flex my bicep, which obviously you can see, right? I can flex my bicep and move my whole arm, those bones and other muscles in. So they kind of work together like that. And skeletal muscle is really cool because it's the one type of muscle tissue that we can control. I could say, raise my hand, lower my hand, stand up, sit down. So skeletal muscle we can control. All right. And smooth muscle is not as strong a muscle, and it's involuntary, right? We can't control it. And that's our third type of muscle tissue. So smooth muscle you find in things like your gut, right? In your small intestine, large intestine. You don't think to yourself, it's not 7:55. I need to go digest right now, right? And try and move food through your digestive system. Your body does it on its own. That smooth muscle slowly sends the food and the bolus through our intestines out to our rectum to be excreted. So those are your three types of muscle tissue. So we have epithelial, connective, muscle, and last but not least, we have our nervous tissue. Okay, and nervous tissue is super important because it kind of is what controls. It's the control center for the whole body. Mostly made up of these cells called neurons, which send signals. We'll get into these parts, maybe remember from biology, axons and dendrites, right? The two parts of a nervous cell. And then you have the neuroglia, right? The supporting nerve cells that surround it. And again, our nervous tissue is responsible for sending and receiving signals. And then it makes up our things like our brain and our spinal cord, right? Which actually help you make decisions. They're electric. It sends electricity to help process information and store information. But it's really cool how it uses that potential, and electricity to send and store and receive information. Really cool stuff that nervous tissue does. And that's it. So that was a quick one tonight. But again, those are our 4 basic tissues with some of the subparts. As we get back into class, we're going to go more in depth on all these because they're very, very complex. We could spend a whole year just talking about tissues. So go through your notes, make sure you got everything, go back and look anything up and write it down if you missed any blanks in your notes, and feel free to shoot any questions. And hey, we'll see you guys in school. We'll see you on the next one. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe, and we'll see you later.